In today's video, I want to consider the current state of comedy. I don't think it's actually hyperbolic to wonder if comedy is dead, in the sense that not in the sense that nothing is funny, or that there aren't funny people out there who can make you laugh. But what I mean by asking, is comedy dead, is simply, can something that is comedic be mass produced and be funny? Is that possible? Is it possible to do that today? There's a variety of things that bring up this question for me. When I look at the contemporary people that I go to for laughs, of course, Sam Hyde and all of his recent antics. Also the podcast Come Town. They're often gross and vulgar, but it's one of those high concept where it's lowbrow with high concept. Where they entertain these kind of absurd ideas that are often disgusting, but they do it in a way that is more interesting because of the conceptual the concept they wrap it up in. Anyhow, so Sam Hyde, Come Town. Who's the guy who does like the Joe Biden impressions? Who has a presence on the internet as well? Kyle is his first name. I'm not remembering his last name now, but anyway, the kind of people that I'm thinking of, they're not. These are niche comedians. They are not people that you would see in a major comedic motion picture. They're not the people that you would see in in something that's being offered by the mainstream. You don't see network television shows, I don't think, anymore, that are comedies. I maybe I'm wrong. I mean, because I admittedly haven't really watched any television shows for a long time. But it's hard to imagine turning on the television and seeing something that's actually legitimately funny, just because there is such because of the woke problem, essentially. And Todd Phillips, the director of Joker, who had directed comedies up to that point. He did the Hangover movies. He did, I think his funniest movie is one called Due Date, with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. I think that one is absolutely hilarious. I was laughing my ass off when I watched it a couple of weeks ago. It's not as well known as the Hangover movies. But Todd Phillips said in the run-up to Joker, when he was asked why he stopped directing comedies, he simply said, "Well, everybody gets offended, and you get called out on Twitter, and people try to cancel you because somebody's some interest group is offended out there. So I just don't want to do it anymore." And that statement made a lot of people upset, but I don't think they could really deny that what he was saying wasn't factual. So you had Todd Phillips, this director who specialized in comedy. In fact, comedy was his genre. A mainstream director, he just decided to get the hell out. Now, I know there are still comedians out there who go on tours and that this all happens and so forth, but it's just hard for me to understand in today's environment when you always have to just mind your P's and Q's to a degree that makes it just absurd. You're walking through a minefield. Now, I'm not a comedian myself, obviously, but I do know that comedy humor is something that really has no rules. What you find funny is something you cannot help but find funny. You don't run it past another part of your brain and say, should I, is it okay for me to laugh at this? And then your brain, the other part of your brain, which is some kind of moral conscience telling you, no, do not laugh at this joke. This joke is demeaning to group X or whatever. It doesn't work that way. If something is funny, then you just laugh. Okay, laughter is a reflexive impulse. You could no more choose to find something funny or to find something unfunny than you could choose to find somebody who's attractive, unattractive, or vice versa. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. I hate to quote Woody Allen, but when he said the heart wants what it wants, I mean, there's some truth to that. I think the context in which he used it was not a great one. Speaking of a comic who's largely, I think, been canceled of late. There hasn't been a Woody Allen film in the last 10 years, has there? But anyway, in any case, the heart wants what it wants, and the funny bone wants what it wants, or the gut. It's a gut thing, really. It comes from the gut. You laugh from the belly, So the same way you like the taste of ice cream, or filet mignon, or whatever, there's nothing in your brain. I mean, yeah, maybe part of you tells yourself don't have too much ice cream. It's bad for you. You keep it in moderation. But when it comes to liking or disliking how something tastes, we're still this is generally still in the same realm that comedy is, that humor is in. And so you're going to find things funny that, you often hear people say, oh, we're going to hell for laughing at this. I don't think so. I mean, I get it. I get feeling guilty about finding something funny if it's something that's really dark, or really mean, or whatever. I get that. I understand that. But still, what's funny is simply funny. And there's, comedy cannot be socially engineered. It just can't be. It can't happen. And so when we live in the kind of time that we do, where, we're told that's not funny, it's just irrelevant. It misses, the whole point. If you're going to lecture people not to laugh at certain things, not to find certain things funny, well, too late. They already do find it funny. You maybe can intimidate them into not laughing at it or not sharing these kinds of jokes that they deem to be offensive in public, or not sharing them over the internet because you'll be canceled forever or what have you. But that doesn't stop people from finding what they find funny to be funny. All right. Again, there are no real rules there. Just like there's no rules surrounding who you find attractive or what you like to eat or drink. It's a question of the taste buds. It's a question of the genitals when it comes to attraction, if I can be crude about it, I guess. And with humor, it's just a question of it's just a question of the psyche. It's a very primal sort of thing. So getting back to what I was saying before, I find that the people who just crack me up, who I listen to, Kyle Dunnigan is the name of the one I was trying to think of earlier. The kind of people that I listen to, that I find really funny, it's not any mainstream source anymore. Like, I don't know if they could make a mainstream movie comedy that I would go to today and laugh my ass off the way I have in the past, the way I did just a short time ago, because they wouldn't make the kind of movies that they even made 10 years ago, that they even made like 8 years ago. They wouldn't have the kind of jokes. It wouldn't contain the kind of punchlines that those movies contain that were funny, because they would be deemed offensive. I mean, I've been on a Seinfeld binge of late. I never really watched Seinfeld when it was out, in the 90s, and everybody was into it, and it was this huge show, this huge phenomenon. I guess I was sort of a contrarian. I was just sort of like, everybody watches it. I'm not going to watch it. But lately I decided to go back and see what I was missing that whole time. And, there are so many things, so many jokes that are made on that show that would never make it today. But back then it was no big deal. And it wasn't like political correctness wasn't around during that time. It was political correctness that led to that famous, not that there's anything wrong with it, line from Seinfeld. But, and even in shows that were even newer shows than that, like the show Community. I've talked about this before. Sorry for the redundancy for those of you who followed me for a long time. But it was on from 2009 till I believe 2014. It didn't have a huge following, but it had a very devoted sort of cult following, and I was one of the members of that cult. I thought it was a really funny show. But, I watch that show now, and I think to myself, ooh, boy, they sure wouldn't get away with that joke today. And this joke was being made in 2012, just 10 years ago. How in the hell did things fall so hard, so quickly? How have we allowed the powers that be to put this what do we call it, this sort of guilt trip on us, we'd better not laugh at this kind of joke or at that kind of joke, and have it works, have it actually work to such an extent that now basically comedy is abolished. I don't think you can really be funny anymore unless you're edgy. Dave Chappelle, I don't think he's far from the edgiest comedian that I can think of, but he's considered mega edgy. and a lot of people don't like him and want to cancel him and are scandalized by the fact that he still has specials on Netflix. So even the kind of comedians who have Netflix specials, who are the closest to being mainstream, even they are sort of treading on thin ice. With the cultural commissars, the joke police. How have they been allowed to grow so powerful? What led to this? Because I know that 10 years ago there were just as many insufferable liberal types out there, who were pushing SJW perspectives, political correctness, and all this kind of stuff, and yet that could somehow they could somehow coexist with a show like Community, or a show like Seinfeld before it, or I could think of some other comedy shows from that era. It wasn't like they weren't around back then, bitching about the kind of things that people were laughing at, but somehow, for some reason, they were allowed to get incredibly empowered. And it's hard to understand, because nobody likes these people. Nobody likes these scolds. Nobody likes being having the finger wagged at you and told you're a racist, sexist, hateful, terrible person if you laugh at this or that or the other thing. Nobody likes that. It's something that continues to be complained about, and yet the joke police still manage to keep their power somehow. Not to me. I say what I want whenever I want. I don't care. And there are a few other people who are like that, obviously. And I'm not a comedian, but if I were one, I would say whatever I wanted. I do still say whatever I want, but I'm not a skilled comedian. But if I were, I would be something similar to the Come Down Boys, or somebody along those lines. But again, so like Come Town, even the name Come Town, obviously that's not geared for a mainstream audience. So it's like what in the world has gone on that we have allowed them to kill comedy to such an extent, or not to kill it, but to make it, to abolish it, to make it practically illegal to be funny. Because if you're funny, you're saying something that you're exposing some kind of truth that you're not supposed to notice, and that's what makes people laugh. They laugh because a comedian says something that you're not supposed to say, and it gets that kind of reaction. They laugh, or maybe they even applaud, because it's sort of like an amen, brother kind of moment. We're not allowed to say this, but here's somebody saying it for us. Anyway, I would just like to know if anybody has any thoughts about how things have gotten to be the way that they are right now. It's a very strange state of affairs. And you look at mainstream comedy, like Colbert or Saturday Night Live. I watch the Saturday Night Live sketches occasionally. I haven't watched the show in like a good 10 years or so, but I watch sketches occasionally, and it's just awful. It's not funny at all. But I know there's always some fat girl in it. And so it's like, well, at least they're being representational. They're not excluding overweight women from comedy, but they are preventing comedy from being funny, it would be fine to have a fat girl up there in the cast of SNL if she were funny. You know, that's supposed to be the criteria. I don't know. So, tell me what you think. I've gone on what Colin Liddell would call a 20-minute rant, so I should stop talking. But let me hear from you. I'm interested in anybody's insight on this matter. Thanks for watching.